Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, let's watch. If you ever have a suggestion for a 1-minute clip that I could include as a TikTok or a short or a reel, you can email us by going to the website psychologyinseattle.com, clicking on the contact button, emailing me there. Or you can comment below. Sometimes it's hard to see those comments because I don't always see every comment, but a lot of people have been submitting little clips, and that really helps me out. Let's watch.
I haven't spoken because we slept at the hotel. I did not sleep very well, and then I woke up not feeling like the best. But I'm upset with myself because I overreacted and it got us to this situation.
Okay, great. If you can admit that you overreact at times, then you are halfway there, maybe even 90% of the way there. Most people have a really hard time with that, particularly on this show. So for her to be able to admit that to herself and to the interviewer is huge. That's a huge strength. I was worried that she wouldn't be able to do that because I don't think we've seen that from her yet. But, the show edits pretty heavily, so maybe she's had those conversations, but they didn't show it to us. But because she seems pretty differentiated, and this is the next day, and he slept somewhere else, so that would be hurtful. So you'd be prone to interpreting that as a hostile act against you if you're Emily, and striking back or putting up walls, and she's not doing that. She's saying I overreacted and I pushed him away and I don't want to do that. And so that's huge. That's great.
He is truly the best person I've ever been with. I don't want him to feel some type of way, especially on our wedding day.
Hello?
Hi, babe.
What's up?
Well, I just kind of wanted to call and check in. I just have been thinking a lot about last night.
Okay, so let's analyze her opening. Your opening to a conflict resolution is an important part of success if you do it right. So there are certain principles that one should follow, like a slow ramp up, a taking responsibility, that kind of thing. So let's rewind that and look at what she said.
Hello?
Hi, babe.
What's up?
Well, I just kind of wanted to call and check in.
Okay, so not terrible because she's not attacking him, and she is initiating the phone call, which is definitely a good move. But she's asking very open-ended questions, and she has a tendency to do stuff like this, where when they first found out that they were pregnant for the second time, she would say, how are you feeling? Instead of also, which is fine, but without also offering maybe how she feels as well. So instead of saying, hey, let's talk about last night, she starts with, hello, babe, or whatever. And he's like, what's up? She's like, well, I just wanted to check in. And if you're Kobe, you're like, you want to check in? I mean, you don't want to talk about what you did last night? It puts Kobe in this position of either having to play the weird game that's being played right now, which is, so we're just going to act like that didn't happen last night. Or it puts Kobe in a position of initiating a talk of just so are you going to bring up last night? You should just lead with that. Hey, wanted to call and talk about last night and apologize. You want to lead with that because you don't want to have Kobe in a position where he's like, what's going on right now? So let's see what happens.
I just have been thinking a lot about last night. I feel bad that I just came at you the way that I did.
Okay, as some of you know, I'm working on a deep dive on apologies, and I feel like I'm getting close to done, and I'm developing by components of apologies based on research on my own experience. And I've actually revised it. If you watch the Will Smith video, I've revised the list a little bit since then. And so let's take a look at it. So in the deep dive, I'm going to go over all the different factors that can inform what sort of apology you should probably do. And sometimes if it's a small transgression, you don't have to include every component, for example. There's also caveats around components that I'll get into. But anyway, what Emily did, I would say, is a pretty big transgression. She, if you remember last week, on the episode last week, she basically was accusing Kobe of not loving her, not really wanting to marry her, only using her for a green card. And it also had been a buildup of other kinds of transgressions that she had committed prior, but if we're just looking at that one. So that's a pretty big one. I mean, imagine the day before your wedding, your partner basically questions everything about your integrity and questions whether or not you are a good person or an evil person, essentially. That'd be a pretty big blow and very hurtful, especially since Kobe has given no reason for her to believe that and every reason for her to believe otherwise. So pretty big transgression. I would put it, definitely in the top range. So number one is to meaning that if it's severe, then you have to really thoroughly address every single component and probably apologize a number of times. So number one is accurately and fully acknowledge the transgression. So that's what you usually want to start with, meaning I did this. Number two is to accurately, fully acknowledge the harm caused. This is the harm caused because I did this. Number three is take responsibility, meaning I did this. No one forced me to do it. It's a choice that I made. Number four is sincerely express guilt, regret, or remorse. I feel bad that I did it. Number five, and I'm just giving real brief explanations or examples. Typically, in a situation like this with Emily, you probably want to elaborate a lot. These would just be topic sentences to a few paragraphs. Number five is explain why it happened without making excuses. You want to show your work, that you've actually worked on why it happened so that you can address it so it won't happen again. Number six is provide a plan to address the cause. Number seven is offer remedy. 8, request acknowledgement of the apology. Did you hear me? Do you understand what I'm saying? Number 9 is request accuracy and modify or elaborate the apology. That's pretty important. And number 10 is request forgiveness if you want to or if you can. So let's rewind and look at how she starts her apology here.
I just have been thinking a lot about last night. I feel bad that I just came at you the way that I did.
Okay, so there's a lot of nuance to apology. So she starts with, I've been thinking a lot about this. So that bolsters what she's about to say. It's not just this flippant apology. She is saying, I feel bad and I've been really ruminating on how bad I feel. So she expresses she's been thinking about it a lot. And so if we were to apply this, we would say that it is potentially satisfying a little bit of number 2, which is to acknowledge the harm caused, because she's saying, I feel bad, which implies she caused harm, and that she feels really bad because she recognizes how much harm she caused. She's also taking responsibility. She's not blaming him for what happened. So let's see how else she does here.
Yeah, that got me worried. We're so close to getting married and she has trust issues.
Okay, so another thing we want to think about is when you're being apologized to, how do you respond? Because you want to encourage the apology to continue. You also want the individual to have a relatively good experience apologizing to you so that they will do so in the future. But you also want to clarify maybe what they're saying or agree with it if the apology is at least mostly accurate. That's another kind of tip that I will see couples in my office, is that when someone is trying to empathize with you and they're only, say, 60% accurate, if you don't have a routine of empathy in your relationship or expressions of empathy, it's probably best to allow the 60% and agree with it, even though they're getting 40% wrong. It depends on the situation, but because if you nitpick the 40%, it could shut down the person who's trying to apologize or have empathy. So let's say Kobe is like, well, she's apologizing for some of it, but it's not the entire thing. And it would be tempting to point that out, right? Like, well, you forgot about this thing. It's even if you did that and you felt like it was important, which it absolutely might be, you want to reward or agree or congratulate or thank the person. Congratulate's funny, but congratulations, you apologized to me. You want to thank them. Well, I really want to thank you for apologizing. I mean, even if the person gets the apology entirely wrong, you want to be like, wow, I want to thank you for apologizing. That's really nice of you. And thanks. It was a bad time. But I want to clarify, so that kind of thing. And what Kobe is doing is he's agreeing with it, and he has a a calm, compassionate voice. He's like, yeah, it had me worried. And you notice his word choice there. He's not saying, yeah, you were an asshole last night, or yeah, you really pissed me off last night. So he's talking from that primary feeling. It's uncomplicated. It's not accusatory. And it makes sense, right? You had me worried because you were saying things about me, now he does say you have trust issues, and I would worry that she would be triggered by that maybe. But even though it's true, right, that is, I'm thinking exactly what's happening, so he's not wrong. But if you're in a tentative situation, you want to be careful about what kind of words you use in that situation. But on the scale of things, he's responding very well, and maybe he knows that she will respond well to that phrase, trust issues. So that's good.
They're not like necessarily towards you. They're just like in general. But I'm realizing myself, like I jump to conclusions like really fast, and I need to learn to just like talk to you about it and not get upset. Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I would imagine this is the only time this component of the apology has been presented on 90 Day Fiancé. And I wasn't expecting it here. I never expected it. I gave up a long time ago watching 90 Day Fiancé, and maybe even in general, because it's kind of a rare component. The component of explaining why it happened, of saying, I did this to you, I harmed you in this way, and I recognize that, and I feel bad, and here's why it happened. I have this problem. It's usually a personality problem, personality tendency, usually derived from relational traumas. And so that's what she's saying. And she's clear. She's not saying there's something about you that triggered. She starts off by saying this is a general problem. She uses that word. I have a general problem, meaning that it wasn't just you provoke. Anyone and a lot of people have triggered this flaw of mine of jumping to conclusions and reacting too quickly. So that's really advanced. That's really great, because a lot of people, when they're in this situation and explaining, they'll be like, well, that thing you did last night, that's why I overreacted. Instead of saying, it doesn't really have, yes, what you did triggered me to overreact, but really a lot of people will trigger me that way. It's not you. I have the problem that everyone will run into eventually. So that's a really high level of apology, which I'm really encouraged to see. I'm really proud of her that she's able to say that. It's great. The next day she's able to say that. So yeah, wow, that's great. I have chills thinking about the fact that she was able to do that, because it's just such a rare thing. And if you can do that, because we all will transgress upon our partners to varying degrees, hopefully to a small degree, but it's going to always happen. And how do we apologize? How do we make up for it? How do we acknowledge what we did? How do we tell and communicate to our partners that we feel bad and that we know what the problem is and we're working on it? And maybe they could help us with it or something. And her doing this is very verbally oriented and very competent, which is great. The reason why I say verbally oriented is that some people will apologize non-verbally. They might actually present or provide an act of service. Like, take a couple where the husband, I don't know, commits some sort of transgression, like when they're parenting the kids, the husband undermines the mom, and the mom is really hurt by that. And the husband sees the hurt, and the wife is kind of moping around for the next 24 hours, and the husband is like, yeah, I shouldn't have undermined my wife. And an explicit way to apologize is to do something like what Emily is doing right now. But another way to do it is perhaps if it's a routine and it's understood, like he buys her an ice cream cone and brings it home or something. It could literally be something as small as that. Like when Asuelu would get her pizza, would get Kalani pizza, he even talks about that. Like, that's his way of showing love. Maybe that's what was going on in his family. Anyway, so the husband brings the ice cream cone and says, I got your favorite ice cream. But the key is does the offended individual, the victim, does the wife feel like all the components of the apology, all the necessary components are fulfilled. It could be. It could be that the wife is like, oh, I know what's going on. I trust that what's happening right now is he is non-verbally apologizing. And through my experience with him, I know that he actually feels bad, even though he's not saying it directly. I also know that he is working on things in the background to try not to do that again. Now, you're leaving a lot up to chance when you apologize like this, and you're really putting the victim in a place where they have to make a lot of trust leaps of faith. And it's much more effective to be straightforward, like what Emily is doing right now. But it depends, it just depends on how relationships work and what is being communicated. So anyway, let's go on with her apology.
So I guess, I'm sorry. I just want you to know that I really do love you and I really do trust you. And I know you have sacrificed so much to be here with Coben and I really cannot wait to marry you.
Okay, so we're not really in the apology zone anymore. She's reaffirming the relationship and, saying that she appreciates him. So that's a good thing to sprinkle in. It's not necessary for the apology portion of the makeup effort, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I guess it is part of the apology in that she's righting the wrong. She's righting the transgression. The transgression was an accusation otherwise, and she's saying, to be clear, the thing that I was communicating last night, I don't believe, and that's not fair to say because of all the sacrifices that you've gone through. They often will talk about that on the show, about the sacrifices. People will say, I can't believe you're accusing me. I mean, look all that I've done. I've traveled so far and I've given up my culture. And sure, that's notable. But I would hope that people would say, do you not feel my love for you? Do you not feel my affection and my empathy and my care and my attention to you, my attunement to your needs? Do you not feel our compatibility or how we enjoy each other's company? They never talk like that. And I wonder if it's a 90-Day Fiancé thing, or it's just a common human thing that it's more vulnerable, or people don't look at the world like that. It's more like this concrete thing, like, well, I gave up X amount of dollars, and so you got to give me this. I don't know. But people out there, think about that. Think about when you are trying to appreciate your partner, think about the kinds of things that, I don't know, I would say are just more fundamental and more meaningful, which is, the things I was saying: love, connection, empathy, preference. One of the things that I always think about with my wife is that when something weird happens in my life, notable in my life, she's the first person I'll tell, unless it's really specific to another friend or something. But, she's the first person I'll tell or text. And it's not just because we live together. It's because, I don't know, I just want to tell her things. And I don't know, it's kind of a weird preface. It's well, why her? It's just a compulsion that we feel, I think, when we're in love or when we care about someone. So, things like that. Things like, whenever I'm happy, you're the first person that I want to tell, or when I'm sad, you're the first person, or when I want to relax and have a good time, you're the first person I want to hang out with, or, one of the first people I want to hang out with, that kind of thing.
Oh, what took you so long?
That horrible night's sleep. That's what took me so long.
Okay, so he communicates, but in a light fashion, a lighthearted fashion. What took you so long? So in one sense, he's communicating something deep, I think, by saying, I imagine what he's communicating is, yeah, it was kind of hard that you didn't think of me that way. And I think he's also saying it wasn't just last night, so there's a lot, I think, being said in that. But there's a little, you can tell he's smiling when he's saying it, and he's also communicating appreciation. And then she reciprocates with that. So, that's good.
Yeah, I also understand that every relationship has its ups and downs, but I love you. Just put that at the back of your mind.
So great job by Kobe. He's saying he's getting to the heart of the matter, the trust issues. And the heart of that is that she is paranoid that he doesn't really love her, that he's going to leave her. And he's saying, put it in the back of your mind that I do love you and I don't want to leave you. Because if you really believe that, then you're not going to treat me like crap, and then you won't have to apologize anymore, which is, really getting to the heart of the matter. And hopefully she identifies that, because, the apology was pretty brief. It was good, but I would suspect that the trust issue will continue unless she really spends time, and maybe she has, to investigate this. And obviously, therapy could help. But I say that because does she really know that what her problem is that it is trust issues? She hasn't really acknowledged that. She says that, and this is actually common for people as well, as their self-awareness emerges, they will start with the least vulnerable explanation. And as time goes on, they get more and more able to see their vulnerabilities. So I could imagine for someone like Emily, or really anyone, that a lesser form of vulnerability is to admit that you overreact sometimes. But a deeper level of awareness is, I have a paranoia about people not really loving me. I don't feel lovable, that kind of thing. So I would hope, I don't know what is underneath it, but at least Kobe thinks that she, at the core, doesn't actually believe that he loves her, or maybe anyone could love her, something. So hopefully she can get deeper to those more fundamental, foundational problems that generate the behaviors, such as the transgressions, which cause a lot of problems. Because it's just, you hear me talk about this all the time. Our relational traumas result in us developing schemas, which develop into a need to defend against the schema. And so you are treated in a way, or somehow interpret life such that you believe that people are going to leave you, or you're not lovable. And you have to deal with that. That's a false assumption about all humans, but you believe that to be true. And then your defense against that, for perhaps Emily, is to be paranoid and also attack, and to be sarcastic, and to be, critical, and the way that Emily is. That's perhaps her way of trying to protect herself from abandonment or from being rejected. But of course, when you do that defense against rejection, it causes rejection. So it's really important that we understand our defenses and what the defenses are generating from, because when we become aware of that, we can actually intervene and not go down that road, because it feels like we're supposed to do it. Like, I use this analogy a lot, but I think it's apt in that if you've ever snorkeled before, the first time you put the snorkel in, you're above water. Sure, you can breathe because you put the tube in your mouth, you're breathing. You put your face in the water, and usually, if not universally, your body doesn't want to breathe in, because your body knows that your face is underwater and has a mechanism that prevents you from breathing in, because you'll drown and die. This probably goes back prior to our species even evolving. And so you put your face in the water, your prefrontal cortex is like, well, I have a tube in my mouth, everything's fine. But the rest of your body is like, no, do not breathe in. And it takes a while to actually get used to it. You have to really train yourself to push past that instinct of not breathing when your face is in the water. You have to use your conscious mind to override your knee-jerk reaction, your physical reaction, your automatic reaction. And so when we are in a relationship and we have those kinds of relational traumas and schemas, there's a automatic reaction of putting up walls and pushing people away. That's our way. That's what we do. That's what feels right to us. But we have to be differentiated and figure out, okay, that defense, like say you don't have a snorkel and you put your face in the water and you forget for a second and you start to kind of breathe in and your body's like, no, well, that's a good thing, right? Because it's working for you. So you want to be differentiated and look at your automatic reactivity and determine which automatic reactions are helping you and which ones are actually not helping you, might even be absolutely harming you, right? So, to further the analogy, you are told by an evil genius that unless you breathe underwater with the snorkel, they're going to kill you. And so, I don't know what kind of weird James Bond movie this is, and you're like, okay, well, now my automatic, and it's the first time you've ever used a snorkel, well, your automatic reaction to not breathe water under, to not breathe in underwater is actually going to kill you. Even though it feels, your body thinks you're going to die if you breathe in with the snorkel, it actually is the opposite. And when you push people away and you attack and you're paranoid and you're critical and you're like, hey, you did that thing to me, and hey, you're going to Ohio, what's going on here? And hey, and you're sarcastic and you're like, yeah, because the style of defense that Emily has is, I think, one of, teenage-like, where teenagers are usually extremely insecure, generally speaking, and the behaviors that they learn from society, in our culture anyway, is to seem like they don't care, to roll their eyes, to be sarcastic, to have a particular tone of voice, to sound like, whatever, I'm cool, you're dumb, I don't need anyone, that kind of thing. And she came across that way, and I'm guessing she adopted that defense when she was young because she had an inordinate amount of insecurity, an inordinate amount of rejection, worry, and it just got retained, and it kicks in when she's particularly insecure, which, you could see happening under the circumstances. But if she were more aware of it, she would say to herself, okay, I have an instinct to be sarcastic and to push away and to control and to do all these things, but that's actually completely against what I want deep down, which is to have this relationship work and to have him love me and not be rejected. All right, well, that is it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.